Hello folks, it is a new week and it is time for some more hobby nightmares. If you like what I do, please like the video. It really does help me out in the old algorithm and pushes my YouTube videos so that more people can get some good content and stuff mentally from hobby nightmares going forwards. Let's jump in, shall we? Also, if you like video games, I have a new channel, Northern Exile Gaming. It is in the description down below. Head over there, subscribe to that if you want to get more of me playing video games and generally nerding out over there. Anyway, Jared says, "Howdy North, it's me, Jared, again. I'm coming to you this time with a sort of other hobby nightmare. This time, I'm coming to you seeking advice on a hobby that we both enjoy. Writing." Okay, alright. Alright. As you know, I've stated before that I'm a bit of a writer myself. Not an official author, of course, but I do like to write here and there and dabble into fanfiction. Most of those fanfics stem from my love of usual fandoms like Warhammer, The Witcher universe, Fallout, and Sonic. Sonic? What? I've also tried to write an Army Men Sarge's Heroes themed crossover with Captain Titus as a toy Primaris Space Marine from the promotional box set before with a Toy Story vibe. That's a really good idea. That is a really funny idea. I love the sound of that. My problem is writer's block and lack of inspiration. For context, I've written stories in the past and posted them all online, but sadly, even my MS Paint Sonic OCS, I don't know what that means, get more likes and views. This is fine to me as writing is its own reward and I often write on impulse. The problem, however, that I have many issues with finishing stories and I've run into several constraints when I have worked on multiple stories. Alright? For context, I actually wanted to write to you about my recent story taking place over the Knuckles show and Paramount Sonic lore. Don't worry, I won't go into too much detail about the Sonic fandom. It's just I have been working on this story and others as of late, and the problem tends to be the same as my other works. It's basically about the show where Knuckles the Echidna goes to Reno, Nevada with his police cop friend. What? Okay. My idea was my two main superpowered villains who consist of Scylla the Fox, who turns giant-sized, and Monica the Cat, who is basically a 40k psyker, and they both ambush him. Thus, a huge boss battle ensues. The problem is that I've later found out that the show wasn't very Knuckles-centered, and I've been trying to fill in the plot holes of the story with having my two villains tear up an Applebee's, and thus buying time and story for me to lead up to the cinematic battle between Scylla, Monica, Knuckles, and even Shadow, who will make an appearance later on. Okay. I know this is not your kind of story, so I'll get into my Warhammer Stories issue. See, I've also written some Warhammer 40k stories last year, and I really wanted to get into writing about both the Old World and Age of Sigmar. From what you know, I am really into monsters, villains, cryptids, and all non-human things. Hence why I'm also an orc and a demons player, and I really like the high fantasy themes of Age of Sigmar. The sad part is the lore itself is still a work in progress, and I don't have much lore to go off of. I cannot motivate myself to continue writing. A big thing is, I generally like to write darker and more horror-themed things. Whilst I have written about the Imperial Guard versus the Tau before, I often use my real-life location on a mountain here in Georgia as an inspiration for my more wilderness-like settings. I love spooky things out in the forest, and I like fantasy to be as out there as possible, yet it all stems from the same issue, me either losing motivation or lack of having material for me to reference. I write many stories, but I rarely ever finish them. I have also tried to make my own fantasy series before, Occult Odyssey, and that fell flat as the same issue of me trying to find inspiration happened once more. That was years ago, and since then I've only written fanfictions as they appear to be more popular on sites such as FFN and AO3. I feel I'd need a real writing team behind me to make any sort of original fiction or non-fiction. What am I to do as far as finding inspiration to finish my particular brand of supernatural horror-themed writing? Is it that I write too many stories, or is it that I need to stop writing fanfictions and write my own stuff again? I normally use fanfictions as I can go in more in depth into the lore, and I love exploring a universe filled with all sorts of nasty critters and scary things up there. I sometimes empathise with the monster in the story more than the humans. Good thing that there's plenty of monsters and antagonists in Warhammer. Anyways, thank you kindly for listening, North. I know sometimes I don't have the most drama-filled hobby nightmares, but life in rural Georgia can be sort of boring. Still, I know you're an author, so I know you can help me out. Cheers. Okay. As a general rule, and this is a hell of a nightmare because I've gone through it myself, right? Try not to do fan fiction. And listen, fan fiction as a bit of fun is fine, and fan fiction, if you're gonna go and share it with other people, is fine. But actually doing it to expand your craft and get better at writing, it's a terrible practice. Don't do it, right? Your skill as a world builder and a writer has to come from the way you make worlds. The way that you're able to transport the reader from one world to another. If you're using somebody else's setting, you're letting that setting do the heavy lifting for you. And you shouldn't. That's one skill you really should be working on. It's making sure that your world is believable and is arrestable. It arrests the reader, right? If you're doing all of your books in 40k, this is why a lot of Black Library writers don't sell any other books. Have you ever noticed that? People who write 40k books, they don't really write anything else. Because nobody wants them. Because they can't world build. Right? The world's built for them. All they've got to do is do a cool story set in that world, but they don't need to world build. They don't need to be a fantasy author. And there's a very good reason why almost none of the Black Library writers, even the more famous ones, have done anything that is not set in the 40k universe or whatever else they seem to write. Okay? Not one of them has had a best-selling series or a bestseller that is not a part of the 40k fictional universe, or Warhammer universe, or, you know what I mean, Black Library. That is because you don't develop those skills. So that's what I would do. I would stop writing stories about Sonic and whatever else you wanted. I would put that on the back burner. Focus on making sure that your art, that your discipline as a writer is focused and there every single day. You should be aiming to write around 2,000 words a day. If you want to get better at writing, that's what I would do. And 2,000 words is not a lot. Alright, we're talking 4 to 5 pages of double-spaced A4 paper. At size 11, Arial, right? It's not a lot. It is not a lot. So aim for around 2,000 words a day, then you will become a better writer. It's that simple. Read as much as you can too. Go out there, read other books. When I struggle for inspiration, I get an audiobook or I start to read somebody else. You know, or I go and play a video game. I do something to take my mind away from what I'm doing. And quite a lot of the time, some of my better ideas will come from me doing other things. It'll just pop into my head, bang, and I'll go, oh, right, I know what to write about next in that world now. Do you know what I mean? The last thing I want to leave you with before I move on to the next hobby nightmare is do not, and here's the thing that I always used to do, do not give up on a setting simply because you saw something else in the world, the real world, that's kind of similar. What do I mean? Well, if you're writing a setting that you think's really original, and then all of a sudden a movie comes out, or a show comes out, or even another book comes out with a similar premise and a similar world, don't give up writing what you're writing, because there is nothing new under the sun. Absolutely, there are no real, unadulterated, original ideas in the world of writing anymore, especially in fantasy. Such well-trodden ground is where we are with fantasy, right? There are very few niches anymore. So don't worry about it. So there's a writer I like called Joe Abercrombie, right? And he writes a grimdark fantasy series. And that's it. His world is very by the numbers. You can recognize it as a fantasy setting. All of the tropes are there. But it doesn't matter, because it's his own style that makes the world. It's his own style of writing that makes you fall into the world and really enjoy it, and it makes it original. Yeah? But if you examine the first lore world, the world that he's writing in, it's a bog-standard fantasy setting. There's nothing special about it. Nothing. Right? There's absolutely nothing special about it. What's special is his storytelling chops. What's special is the characters that he's made to go into the world. So don't be thinking just because you're making something that other people might have made before, or something similar, that you need to stop writing. That's nonsense, right? Keep going. I've had this with black coats before. I thought I was so clever writing black coats. Oh my god. I thought I was so clever. I wrote black coats and thought, I was like, yeah, there's nothing else in the world like this. It's great. And then only for me to find, as I'm writing it, there are multiple black coats-like settings out there that probably do it far better than what I do. But you know what? Bollocks to that. I carried on and I finished it. I got it done. I was proud of it. Finishing something is a huge boon. It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling to finish something, especially if it's writing. Very, very, very hard to do. So start earning wins. Start finishing. That's what I would do if I were you, alright? 2,000 words a day. And follow it through. And accept that the first couple of things you write will be shockingly bad. Shockingly bad. Accept that and move on. Finish. Anyway. Pingus says, "Hi North, you can call me Pingus." I have done, thank you. "This is a nightmare from the very early days of my hobby journey. I got into 40k back in 5th edition, and my first box was the Assault and Black Reach starter set, with a load of Orcs and Space Marines inside. I was about 12 at the time, and chose to have Space Marines as my army, with a custom Space Marine chapter. I lived, breathed, and slept. Every Saturday, my local games workshop would host gaming events, and I was having a boatload of fun. After a short while, I decided I wanted to be an Orcs player instead. I loved the silly green Cockney men and their cobbled together technology. One weekend, my local games workshop was hosting a narrative game between Orcs and Space Marines, and I brought my Orcs. I only had the ones in the Black Reach box and was very excited to play with them for the first time. It was at this event there was a long table with a defensive Marines position on one end and the Orcs approaching from the other, with more Orcs arriving each turn in an endless war. No one that I knew from the store was there, and most players were probably in their mid to late teens, so I felt a bit awkward as I was the youngest person there. The employee running the game was very good though, and was making sure everybody got involved. I was moving my boys up every turn and very excited to start chopping up some Smurfs. But now begins the nightmare. After a few turns as my Orcs were approaching the defensive line, an older kid, Jensen, told me, and I quote, "Your Orcs are scared and so they're running away," and moved my Orcs away from the defensive line. As I was so young and new to the hobby, I didn't question this, and just accepted it. I didn't know the ins and outs of the rules and didn't know anything about Orc rules, so I just assumed Jensen was telling the truth. Come the next turn, he came over again and moved my Orcs yet further back. The employee running the game had his hands full, and so he may not have noticed, and I didn't/don't hold that against him. Okay. Jensen did this to me every turn, and I didn't get to roll a single dice before my parents picked me up and took me home. It left a very sour taste in my mouth, but didn't deter me at all. I still fell in love with the boys in green and became known in my store for my awesome Orc kit bashed and conversions, with store employees often excitedly asking me to show them my latest creation. Overall, this was not the most horrible nightmare, as it didn't remove my love for the hobby. But I still sometimes think back about how Jensen and how insecure somebody must be to deliberately exclude a young child who's far younger than them from a narrative fun event. Thanks for all you do, North. I have a big apocalypse event coming up, and if you want to hear more about that, I can email you afterwards with pictures. Please do, yeah. All the best, and I hope your granddad is recovering well. Cheers. He's doing very well. He's doing very well, thank you. The thing is, there are certain hobby nightmare, shall we say, standard templates, right? Somebody taking advantage of a young hobbyist to cheat and get an easy win is one of the most staple hobby nightmares that we have. And it kind of irks me just how prevalent it is. For every one of these emails that I get, like from Pingu here, right? I get about 5 or 6 of the same kind of email, and I have to email them back saying, "Listen, man, this has come up a lot, so it'll be in another hobby nightmare, but I'm not going to read yours because, you know, I don't know. Right? I pick one at random, right? But I'm telling you now, for every one of these emails that I get another 5 or 6. People just saying, yeah, you know, when I was a kid, or I saw it happen to another kid where they're in a store and they're trying to get into the hobby and they're loving life, and then some idiot douche comes in and feels like it's in their prerogative to cheat and finally get a win at 40k. If you need to cheat to get a win at Toy Soldiers, I don't know what to say to you, dude. Don't know what to say to you. On the flip side of that as well, if you even feel the need to, say in a narrative event, if you bring a hard counter to somebody's army, right, and you know that they're going to have no chance to beat you because you brought a hard counter to it in a fun narrative event, I also would put you in that category. Why you need to examine your life. You desperately need a bit of self-examination. I don't get the mental side of it. I just don't get that at all. You know, I don't think I ever will, to be honest with you. The way these people act. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway, moving on. Bo says, greetings, Northern Exile. My names are a bit hard to get right for most foreigners, as a fair few Slavic names are. So just call me Bo. I write to you to share a hobby nightmare I had quite a while back that led to a fairly funny situation recently. Now, as you might guess from the subject of the email, I'm a bit of an aged flatulence, if you will. Okay? Being 33 and all. Feel free to hydrate at your convenience as you read this. I know how things are when one enjoys tea. I personally enjoy it as well, though I prefer a cold infusion of freshly dried leaves over 12 to 48 hours in the fridge over steeping in a hot water than adding milk. Anyway, moving past personal beverage preferences onto the hobby nightmare. Alright. I came late into the hobby. Or was it that the hobby came late into my country? Doesn't matter. I got into Warhammer 40k about around a month or so before 7th edition came out, and it wasn't mind-blowing or anything like that. A friend just showed me his Marines, and I liked them, so we played and I got into the hobby. Though I've never been much for competitiveness nor tournaments, preferring casual narrative or combination of both of those over the tournaments. I did attend a few around about the same time, and it was all fine. I never placed in the podium, but I did have fun, and thankfully, never having to face any Emperor-bothering Codex creeps, what I called the tryhards, during tournaments. Don't get me wrong, I played a few games at my local gaming store against that type, usually tabling them somewhere before the end of turn 2, or if they were really annoying, turn 3. Want to guess what Legion or chapter I play? I'll give you a hint. I share a hobby with them, smithing. It's probably salamanders? Yeah? Moving along though, I was friends with my local game store's staff, even the manager, and occasionally I'd show up there and plant my fat gluteus maximus in a corner and paint up a mini or two. At that time my home was loud. Yeah, let's go with loud. Okay. Is that because of arguing, or I suppose you'll open up as we go in. Alright. I'm going to have a little drink here. Very nice. The store, being one that sold all kinds of games and toys, saw a lot of kids coming and going, bouncing in and out, checking out stuff without their parents. Usually, this wasn't a big deal. The staff were happy to engage with them, maybe even make a sale, or maybe just show them around. Most of the time, I was ignored and was perfectly happy to be so. Sometimes, though, kids would take an interest in what I was painting, which generally ended with them sitting and watching me as I did so, or trying out a game with me. I didn't mind, and I always tried to make the games fun for the kids, more than being bothered with the rules. It's after all more important to have fun than be an Emperor-bothering Codex creep. Yeah, if you're giving an introduction game to somebody who's younger, the rules are the last thing that they need to learn. What they need to learn is what the game's like to play. What it's like to be across the table from somebody rolling dice and commanding armies in Warhammer 40,000. That's what they need to know, you know? They don't need to know, you know, what modifier this thing has to its armor save or whatever. No, just play the game. Have fun. If we didn't end up playing, I'd usually give the mini I was painting to one of the kids that bothered to watch. occasionally gifting out paints and brushes as well, if they already had some minis, or showing them how to achieve a specific look. I had money at that time and the hobby was very easily affordable to me. Now comes the nightmare. It was around the time of 8th edition and when it came out. Think a week or so after it. I popped down to the store with some paint and some marines, thinking it was some Terminators. Don't hold me to it, my memory isn't what it once was. For a little more context about me, I'm 6'3" and around 300 pounds. Alright. Hula he wearing, permanently scowling massive flesh. Mostly due to having thyroiditis? Anyway, for about 20 years, and it being left untreated. I tend to have a bit of BO, which is unavoidable because of the thyroid issue, although I almost do my best to keep it under control. Now back to the nightmare. I set up my stuff in my usual corner where all my paints and painting supplies are set up on display, and start painting my minis. About halfway through it, a kid, who looked no older than 12, bounces into the store wide-eyed, and I distinctly remember hearing the loud, "Wow, what is this amazing place?" He looks around the staff, and they talk to him. They show him stuff, and it's all going fine. Seeing me, he rocks up to the table and starts talking to me while I paint about why I'm doing it, how, and what mini I'm painting, what 40k is, and so on. I think nothing of it, happily talking to him, even letting him try to paint one of my other minis. Eventually, he shows me a red marine, all happy because he painted it, so me being me, I decided to give it to him and tell him that as he painted it, I will let him have that marine. And just as he's jumping for joy, Mama Bear storms in, raising a fuss, swearing, yelling, cussing up a storm, cussing out the staff, the store, the manager, until she spots him, sitting in the paint corner opposite me. He gets up to run to show her his new toy, but before he can, she smacks it out of his hand, and proceeds to slap him twice, and then hit him on the head twice, before I can even intervene. She turns to me, and proceeds to yell profanities that would make sailors question her sanity, and coach drivers look embarrassed. Alright? She has an inclination that I'm some sort of predator. Wow. Okay. That needs to be fed into a wood chipper feet first, and that I was preying on her child. Wow. Then dragged him out by his collar. After that, I kind of never went back to the store. The store staff apologised to me, and so did the manager, but it wasn't their fault. I just didn't feel like my presence there was good for the store and the hobby. I did leave that marine with one of the store staff for him to give to the kid if he saw him again, and about a month or so after that, I'd leave the hobby due to life deciding to toss a couple of fecal-themed natural disasters at me. Basically, my dad had his first of 3 myocardial infarctions, and my mum ended up needed help taking care of him. I moved, sold my minis, and focused on keeping my family alive through 3 infractions, 12 tents, 2 strokes, and dementia. In case of dad, and 2 infractions, 8 tents, 1 stroke, angina pectoris, and diabetes in case of mum. Wow. Wow. Me seeing what's gone on with my grandpa, right? I have an amazing amount of respect and patience for people in care homes, or people working to take care of people who can't take care of themselves. It is a thankless task. You know, it is absolutely thankless, and for you to give up certain parts of your life to go and make sure that your parents are okay, you've done your duty there, and I can't express any more sympathy or respect. You know, put some respect on your name for that. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Recently, with their health stabilising and me finding a decent job, I got back into the hobby by buying some second-hand minis from a guy in my new home city. Want to guess what I painted them as? Of course, salamanders. My original and forever Legion/chapter. Whilst visiting my home city again, I went to one of the local gaming clubs, and as I entered, in the display case, I saw a very familiar red Space Marine. After talking to the staff, it turns out The kid started the gaming club when he turned 18 as a passion project of his to give people a place to play and paint together. I swear I didn't have a tear in my eye, I swear. Well, that was my hobby nightmare, and it's oddly a happy end. Hopefully you're doing well and life is treating you like a softer dominatrix treats an obedient sub. Peace out from the arse end of Europe, the Balkans. Alright, so, I'm really, really, really glad that that had a happy ending. I really am, because that was kind of horrific. That was horrible. You know, there are certain parents that just don't get it, and one thing I think we're not seeing here, right, is what kind of child this is, okay? If this is a child who is utterly disobedient and keeps running off in city centres and getting lost and nearly getting themselves abducted, I can see why the mum here reacts to the kid in such a way, right? Should she smack him around the head? No, of course not. But I get why she's so relieved to like find out where he is if he's just run off on his own. Do you know what I mean? It's the most irritating. I swear, like, it's really irritating and annoying. And it's like, just don't do that. I've told you not to do that, right? It's a ridiculous thing to do. Don't run off on your own. So I get her anger towards the kid. Her anger towards you, though, this is somebody who clearly cannot control their emotions. Because number one, she's smacking a kid around the head, which is not good. And number two, she lashes out at you like you're the one who like was trying to abduct him or something. You know, and I think people throw around accusations like this or words like that without realising how much of a real shitter that can put on somebody's day. Not only their day, but their hobby. Like, your entire hobby, you just went, you know what, I'm done with this. And you left. You know, and we nearly never got you back. You need to be very, very, very careful about what you say to people when you try and ruin their day, you know? Maybe emotions were running high, but I don't see the justification for what she said to you. I just don't. Really glad it had a happy ending, though. And you obviously did have a good influence on the kid as well, because when he turned 18, he created his own gaming club. That's brilliant. That's awesome, and that's what I like to see. Tomorrow we'll be doing another 40k rant, I think. So we'll see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye now.